just don't know when to give up, do you, Batman?
Inque. Origin explored. Everyone has their own origin stories for the way they have turned out. No villain is just inherently born evil. Whether they turn to crime by choice or by force, all villains have their own reasons behind these actions.
Tell him.
Sometimes their actions are justified, and we often empathize with them, but a lot of times they are misunderstood. One such villain is Inque, an anti-hero who uses her shape-shifting abilities to wreak havoc around Gotham City. Introduced in the Batman Beyond series and comics created by writer Adam Beechen, Inque's arc is full of tragedies and science experiments and lethal transformations that allow her bodily fluids to shapeshift per her wishes. Let us explore Inque's origins and get a glimpse into the series of events in the past that shaped her into the lethal mercenary we know today. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Not looking too healthy, Inque.
Healthy enough to take care of you.
Inque Tragic Origin, the story of Inque. It's darker than you dreamed. Explored in the Batman Beyond comics, Volume 4, Number 8, we learned that Inque's origin story is a lot more tragic than one could ever imagine. In this issue, titled Legends of the Dark Knight, Inque is out on a mission to steal a trigger that could act as a remote for any and every weapon ever created. While the army of soldiers try to capture her, Batman uses his freezing, icy batarangs to attack her. Inque does not get affected by these attacks and injures a soldier before she escapes the place with the trigger. While escaping, she wonders if Inque attacks a guard and wonders if she tries to share her secrets, would anyone be willing to listen? The Batman chases behind while Inque makes a run across the city, coming to a halt soon. It appears that the mutagen is making her weaker, and she settles down, thinking about her past. She was born in a poor city, and her childhood was severely impacted due to the civil wars. Living in refugee camps every day, the young Inque had to battle diseases every day and trade in the black market for necessities. As time passed, the war worsened, and the refugee camps had to be shut down. As everyone rushed to the boats for evacuation, Inque had to watch her mother die by firing bullets. Even her father was left behind due to a debt to the black market, and the young girl was shipped off by herself to an unknown place where she could only hope for a better life. With nothing but her dreams to keep her alive, she survived as best she could on the boat, staying in the shadows and out of sight of trouble. At her first chance, Inque ran away from the boat and found herself on the streets of Gotham when she started to feel sickness creeping in. However, this sickness turned to joy when she discovered she was pregnant, and Inque had a new reason to live. She was determined to make a life for herself and her child and fulfill her dreams, which she now shared with her child. Looking around for any chance at a living, Inque accepted an offer to participate in an experiment in exchange for food and shelter. The scientists did not mind her pregnancy and even looked forward to seeing the results of such a case. However, after a while they let her go in case of complications. Without a roof over her head, Inque sought asylum at a charity ward where she gave birth to a young girl, Deanna. Soon after, the experiments on her body finally showed their results, and she started to transform into the Blob. Not wanting to risk the safety of her daughter, she gave her up for adoption and then tried to get used to her new form. Once she mastered control over her shape-shifting powers, Inque used them to commit crimes for money. She was hired by Derek Powers for a high-paying job and soon became a master at sabotaging and theft. Convinced that her daughter thinks of her as a monster, Inque used the money from her jobs to provide for her daughter from afar. However, Inque took her chances and introduced herself to Deanna when she was older. Her daughter wanted nothing from her except the money and gifts, so Inque continued to send her everything she needed and kept her distance. Things started worsening for Inque at this point, and her body weakened due to the toxins from the experiments. She needed more mutagen to survive and approached Deanna for assistance. Sadly, Deanna betrayed Inque and called called the Batman on her. Inque managed to get out of the situation, and now subsequently accepted jobs where she could be paid in mutagen. One such job was stealing the trigger, and as Inque gets back to deliver the trigger, Dr. Thawne refuses to give her the mutagen in return. She threatens to kill him, and Thawne warns her that he might be her only hope at obtaining the mutagen as well as a cure for her condition in the future. Inque leaves the premises, and we learn that the experiments during the pregnancy passed on her condition to Deanna. Her daughter, though not on the best terms with her mother, still needed her, and Inque did her best to provide for her. She visits the hospital and injects some of the mutagen in Deanna's 4 IV. As she leaves, Inque asks an unconscious Deanna to think of her not as a criminal or a killer, but as a mother who loves her daughter. Despite having been misunderstood her whole life, Inque still hopes for a day where they can put their differences aside as she continues to take care of her dreams and her daughters.
He didn't get away. And neither will you.
Inque's misadventures in the Batman Beyond series. Inque was a recurring villain in the Batman Beyond series, appearing in episodes across all 3 seasons. Her first clash with the Batman was shown in the episode Blackout, Season 1, Episode 3, as soon as she had begun working for Derek Powers. When Inque is confronted with the Batman, her mission to ruin Foxteca fails miserably. The vigilante attempts to subdue Inque, but is thwarted repeatedly owing to her shapeshifting abilities. Finally, Derek Powers offers Inque any amount of money in exchange for killing the Batman. Inque devises a plan and causes disruption at Foxteca to lure the Batman, and then tries to steal his Batmobile to locate the Batcave. She almost succeeds, but then the Batman catches onto her plan and attacks her. Inque fights back and pours herself down Batman's neck, attempting to choke him. She would have succeeded if Bruce hadn't soaked her in water. Since water causes the liquids in her body to dissolve, it can be seen as a medium to capture her or weaken her movements. Inque tries to recover and rushes back inside Foxteca, hatching a new plan to kill the Batman. However, she failed, and Batman manages to freeze her using Mr. Freeze's gun. Inque's body hardens and breaks into pieces of ice, which are then handed over to the police. After her previous gig, Inque returned in the episode Disappearing Inque, Season 1, Episode 11, and we learned that she is held captive in a block of ice at Gotham Cryogenics. Though imprisoned, Inque could still retain her consciousness and was aware of her surroundings, and hears the supervisor, Aaron's confession of love to her. He is soon fired, and he sets Inque free out of spite towards the company. Inque escapes the place, though with a lot of difficulty since the ice had frozen her DNA.
But don't worry. I'm not going to tell anyone. Not unless you're stupid enough to try and call the cops.
She uses Aaron's help to break into Fulton Labs and steals necessary materials to restore her health, where they encounter the Batman. Along with Aaron's help, Inque manages to subdue Batman, and they escape. She gets determined to kill Batman and finds out who aids him. The Batman Beyond series features Terry, predecessor of Bruce Wayne, as the Batman with some help from Bruce himself. Inque discovers the link between the two, and then drags Terry into an ancient Gotham cave. She even injects Aaron with some of her liquid treatment, which liquefied his body and left him helpless. Bruce comes for Terry's rescue along with Aaron, who seeks his revenge, and they overpower Inque. As the episode comes to an end, Terry's Batman breaks free from Inque and smashes the cave's skylight, causing raindrops to fall on Inque as her body begins to liquefy and dilute into the sewers. Inque also reappears in the episode Inkling, Season 3, Episode 3, after recovering from a sabotaging job for her client, Mr. Winchell. However, when she shows up to receive her fee, he shoots her with a destabilizer gun that weakens her greatly.
No substance is impervious.
A helpless Inque shows up at Deanna's door and asks for her help in securing more mutagen. As we have explored in the origins, Deanna plots her own revenge against her mother and dissolves some solvents in her mutagen, causing her to weaken furthermore. Deanna even summons Batman, and Inque is ultimately surrounded with nowhere to flee. Inque becomes outraged and attempts to strike at her daughter, questioning how she could betray her mother while being given money her entire life. As the two share a moment, Deanna explains that she received no love or support other than money, and thus she betrayed her. Inque somehow manages to escape, leaving Deanna terrified for her future in case her mother returns for revenge. In the future, Inque returns to her sabotaging and stealing gigs, and at some point she even finds herself face to face with both Batman as well as Superman on one of her robberies. It is known that she further joins hands with other supervillains to form the Iniquity Collective. What makes Inque different from other Batman villains? Inque possesses a very rare ability to shapeshift, making her stand out among the pool of villains. After the experiments, she was considered a polymorph who could change her physical form at will, and her body had a liquidly smooth texture. Her physical form was greatly mutated, and she transformed into an unrecognizable glob of black body with an oval white face and no features. She could use her abilities to liquefy or harden herself, grow tentacles, blend in with puddles or shadows, fit into places, climb walls or rooftops, and even camouflage herself with her surroundings. Moreover, Inque's never give up attitude and ability to make the best out of the worst situations is quite refreshing to see. All these traits together make her one of the very few who could put up a difficult fight for Batman.
Feels like a tickle now.
Conclusion. Inque not only had immense physical power, but was also strong-willed, making her one of the most dangerous Batman villains. Having been through the worst of tragedies, she is a seasoned mercenary and has an upper hand over even the most powerful criminals in the Gotham crime scene. Though her strength appears to be fading with time, Inque will go to any lengths to get what she wants, and it's best to keep out of her way. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
Looking too healthy, Inque.
Healthy enough to take care of you.
No!